Hello, people. Welcome to another edition of Friday Night Knives here on A Dose of Drew. I am said Drew, and tonight we're going to be doing the TRM manufacturing, Three Rivers Manufacturing Neutron 2. This is the one with the newest one with the actual nested liners, which is fantastic, by the way. It did not come with these scales. Full disclosure, it came with the flat blue scales, which are perfectly fine and beautiful, but they are non-contoured. They have the nice bevel, but the contoured ones really do make a difference, especially on something so slight and thin, which, by the way, it is quite thin. But first, before we get too far into that, let's get into a couple of bits here. We will check out the weight here on my handy dandy kitchen scale. The ounces. This, by the way, is lightweight. 2.46. Woo! For some comparisons. Pair 3 lightweight. Ritter Hogue Mini. Ooh, the Hogue Deca. Alright, so we're definitely in the lightweight territory when it comes to this one. So, and it's pretty good. Oh, a couple of standard bits here. It is a small knife, so we're only going to have a tiny little bit of that. In fact, let's do that right now. First off, the Kershaw Blur. As you can see, it is somewhat smaller than the Blur there. And of course, not just any leak, but a random leak. See, much closer to the leak size. Really, it's not too far off the handle size when it comes to the Blur, but that's running off there and all that sort of stuff. Definitely not bad when it comes to the size. It's right there. It is in the small range, no doubt about it, but it is not the tiniest thing out there. And of course, one more, give you the full bit paramilitary too, in case you have not seen, and the pair of 3 lightweight. Much closer, as you see again, to the pair of 3 lightweight. Very, very similar on cutting edge. Right? There's definitely some cutouts. There's some finger, but if you look real close, hand space ain't too far off. Right? So you get a lot of good hand space without the little beak. Not quite the dedicated choil area, but you get a little bit more space to move around. And even a little bit more actual sharpened edge than the pair of 3 lightweight. So it definitely has its bonuses when it comes to certain aspects of it. And of course, one more here, and that is the Rat 2 and D2. Dual R2, D2, as you can see, very close in size. And of course, the now ubiquitous Civivi Elementum. Definitely something you can see here. It is right in the ballpark for these. You get lots of good finger space, right? Lots of edge, lots of hand space. Without the beak in there for the flipper tab, you get a little bit more room, though you don't have anything dedicated that you can pull on. There's kind of a little nub, but it has its bonuses when it comes to the size and all that sort of stuff. And one more I want to throw in here simply because it's part of the family, and that is the TRM Atom. As you can see, it is significantly smaller. In fact, there's a whole finger space that is added to the Atom that really it could do with a finger choil that has enough space. It's definitely on the larger size. The other thing you'll notice is the extra belly at the tip when it comes to the profile of the cutting edge. Right? There's only that little bit when it comes to the Atom here. It's significantly more acute at the tip as opposed to a little bit of belly for the quick, longer cuts when it comes to it. And another one I want to throw in here, not because it is of the same family, but it is interestingly enough to look at, and that is the Wee Esprit, designed by Ray Laconico. I have another video of this up here, but if you take a quick look at this, you may notice it's real close to being in the family. It's a little bit bigger than the little sister and a bit smaller than the big sister. So it's right there in the Goldilocks zone as well. One of my favorite knives. But just to throw out there, looking at some of this, there is a lot of similarity in the handle comfort. And this is a good thing. The contoured bits of it, the shape, very good. You can definitely see family resemblance. Even though they're not in the same family, it really has some beauty to it when it comes to it. One of my favorite knives here in the Wii Esprit that really kind of fits in that middle, or if you look, doesn't quite look the same as that. All right, so there we are. A lot of the size comparisons out there. This is going to be quick because you guys, this is a great little knife. For those who don't know, if you can't tell if I show you the scale, you can remove the scales on these and not have any functional reduction in the knife other than grip and that sort of stuff. You can have a naked Neutron. In fact, they sell them, naked Neutron, naked Atoms, and then get your own handles. You can 3D print them. You can do all sorts of stuff. I have ideas for getting swappable inlays that... I haven't got around to it, believe it or not. I had problems with my back and everything, so I have things about this. And the new Banter, sorry, it's not the Banter, the new Navs, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, and I'm not going to look it up, so we're just going to have to do with the fact that I screwed it up and called it the Banter, but it's not. There's a new one out that has a similar thing where you can actually pop the scales off, either create new scales or do whatever you want, and it's out there. It's fantastic. That review hopefully is coming soon as well, once I can get my hands on the knife. And the other thing about this is it's not drop shut in the normal. It is running on washers. It is not running on bearings. It is phosphor bronze washers in that little sit there. So it is not drop shut in the normal. You can shake it, right? And it's got decent action. The nice large thumb studs on that. If you can see, they're very, very large, thin blade stock. CPM 20 CV, M39, whichever you want to call it, definitely a good steel. It's got a great edge on it, very, 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 very relatively equal on each side when it comes to the bevel size. There's a little bit larger on one side than the other, but so be it. That high flat grind, it's like maybe 50% saber on grind on this one. Just as a comparison. It's about the same on there. It's approximately the same height too. So even though it's on a smaller knife, you kind of line that up. The actual height and geometry of that blade compared to like the Atom is very similar. So you get a smaller blade with very, very nice slicing capability, and that really pulls it up on there. It gives you a lot of all of the standard. You can get the pinch grip, the modified pinch grip, thumb on the side. You can really get up on those thumb studs. You can choke back with your thumb on top to get some really good bits, or really good pressure on there. And if you want to get into some just scoring bits, you can keep your hand back or even up. Pick a sliver. You definitely got plenty of room for that. Or if you need to get just a scoring, you can draw. You can easily get you have some space where your knuckles can get out of the way while still doing draw or score cuts. Very, very nice when it comes to it. The opening action is great, and while the closing action is not, right, you gotta shake it. It is smooth as it gets. If you do your finger, it is the lightest and most consistent of pressures, and it clicks right in. D10 is great. You can't shake it loose. Did that out of camera. See if I can't. Okay, so you can super whip it with about as much effort as it takes to do anything, and you have to flip it over to do it. So you can drop open it with the thumb studs, but why? If you have a thumb stud, it works. Great action, smooth hydraulic. Distal taper on it, fantastic. With that flat saber grind, it starts to taper out to the tip. Makes for a nice, acute tip, while still being robust enough to not worry too much about things. This is an EDC knife. Yeah, you can do it for some heavy duty stuff if you really want to get to it. But this is really more of a slicer. This is do food prep. This is, I have an apple in my pocket and I want to slice it, or I want to cut that tomato that I just pulled off the vine. Something like that is what this knife is for. That thin blade stock, oh, that just tears. It destroys. See if I can't get it. This is an envelope destroyer. Right? You get it just that thin. It just rolls right through it. And trying to do it on camera is not the best idea, but as you can see, it does a great job. It is very slim. You can get the upside down like that in order to open, if you're going to open up your things, whether the pinch grip. I like the thumb because you can have something to push against. But you know, that's how it goes. So just about every grip on here works. Yeah, the inverted or reverse grip when it comes to it is decent enough if you need to really put some stab on there. Your thumb can roll over the back so you can brace it so without a little beak or something to keep it on there just a little bit. But your thumb can definitely act as the backstop for the stab. Pinch grip, again, this is my favorite grip on this. It's nice and thin. It gives you a lot of control from the back of the hand to the pinch, right? You can really direct it. This thin bit this way with the long fly that way gives you lots of torsional control. Once again, just for some comparison on thickness here, we'll get something that's pretty big. Oh boy, let's see if that's going to go. Yeah, it's about the same once you count the clip, because there's a lot of gap there, but so be it. Oh, one last thing, just in case I felt it wasn't necessary this time, but as you can see, my Wienar is both longer, thicker, and heavier in every measurement, and that's all there is to it. You don't need to look at anything else. That's all I'm going to say. So that being said, it is thin, and this clip has been well opened up. There's more room in that clip than there is knife below it, so there's plenty of space for hem, pocket, wherever you're putting this thing. And that, not the biggest kick up on the tip, on the front end to get you on there, but if you have something thin or anything like that, it does really well. Athletic shorts, like hiking cargo pants or anything like that. The clip does really well by holding in there and having the extra gap around the hem. It can move. It bunches up if it slides. It's not going to cause you discomfort. It's actually relatively well thought out and used. So that's that. And you guys, this is probably going to be short. This is not a new knife. Probably the biggest problem with anything TRM is they just have a hard time they are in demand, and for very good reason. They have a difficult time keeping up with the demand for their knives, and they do a good job, and they do not sacrifice their quality. So they get her done, but they do it in batches, and they get them out pretty fast, but they sell out fast too. So one of the worst things about the TRM is quite honestly the fact that it's really hard to get them. You got to sit there and wait. They're just difficult to get a hold of. They're increasing their production capacity, but as they do so, they still, it's like the same old thing with keeping up with traffic. By the time the next traffic reduction project is done, they'll have just kept traffic from getting worse, and it'll go back to like it was before they did the project. It's a really sad thing. Kind of silly when you think of it. But that being said, you guys, this is going to go in there. The design of it, oh my god, it is classic. It is fantastic in the hand. The design when it comes to the overall, from the thin bits, the Barbie doll of knives action where you can swap out with just a couple of screws. For those who haven't seen, and I have a little bit of time here, we can show a little bit about that. It is quite honestly as simple as this. Just to give you all an idea. Bam. Now we're wearing new clothes. Now it's a new knife. It's got new clothes. I just swapped those two screws back in there and screw them down, and bam, we have ourselves a new new looking knife. It's got different colors and everything else, and it is quite as simple as that. You do that on each side. You pop the other side's a little bit harder with the clip, because you'd have that little bit more to deal with, but really in the end it is a few screws and swap them out. So that's a beautiful thing when it comes to design. Right, the aesthetics, it's not unique. There's other knives that resemble, but it's unique enough that it carves its own style sense. If you want my own opinion, I see a lot of Bob Kramer kitchen knife design in the tip, which is a compliment. When it comes to the way that it's kind of shaped and goes down, where a Bob Kramer knife, kitchen knife. But that's really where I see it a bit. This, by the way, is again scales it did not come with. So there's a design aesthetic here. Aesthetic. Anyway, looks cool. There's a design language that is pretty standard, and it is continuous throughout the line and the manufacturer. So that is a good thing. The mechanics are really hard to fault. It is washers, absolutely phosphor bronze. Yes, there's a whole thing about could it have been bearing stuff. Bearings, possibly, but bearings have a minimum amount of space that they take up, and it's more than the washers, which means it probably would have come with a little bit of extra thickness if it would have required bearings instead of the washers. The washers in no way reduce the smoothness of the action. What they do is they make it so it's not drop ship. It means you have to deliberately close this. And for something that generally has your fingers in the way, in order for you to break the lock, that's actually a good thing. There's a little bit of inherent safety there in that it's not two-handed. Like once I get it over the thing, I can shake that thing down, right? And the solid action is there. There's a little bit better when it comes to the Atom because of the longer blade that it can drop, right? There's a little bit more weight to make it do that. So there is in the Atom a bit more of that drop shut action with the washers itself. And this particular version has been broken. I've taken it apart, polished the washers just a little bit so that they get a little bit more of that smooth action. So this one, I can do the same. This has not been, I just swapped out the scales, have not done any other maintenance on this yet. So there is some smoothness to be had, but for the most part, or some ease of drop, but the smoothness is there from the get-go. It is hydraulic. There's no catch spots. There's no wavy. There's no, just one smooth action from open to close and close to open. So that's good. As far as notable points, I mean, this is not a cheap knife. It is not an expensive knife for what you get. You can get titanium ones. This is going to be a couple $100 for a U.S. made, U.S. sourced knife and a U.S. company owned. And it's a relatively small company. You can talk to them. You can email them. They're great folks. They have done nothing but good things for me when I have ever I've had two problems, and they have literally emailed me back to make sure I had no more problems. So their customer service is top notch. They genuinely care about their product. They have other stuff they do in addition to this business. And so the company itself is a noteworthy point. Just you can rely on them to stand behind their product as well as be proud of it, which is important. There's many companies that do, and it's nice to know that TRM does as well. The intended purpose is EDC, and you could get this one knife, get some extra scale, spend it, and for most of your life as an EDC knife, you would never need another one. It's a 20 CV. It'll hold an edge for a long time. That thin sliciness means it's nice and flexible. It tends not to chip. Helps with the chippiness, the edge for on a steel that's this hard, as well as relative low toughness. The thinness of the steel gives it some flexibility and helps prevent chipping as long as you're not smashing it down on stuff. So that's there. And really, the cost to value. Look, there's other ones out there. I'm not going to sit here and tell you there is not another knife out there for cheaper that you can get nearly as good, because I can pull two without even having to look very far and be like, look, they're cheaper. And you get, there's anywhere from 20 or $30 to $50 difference in price, and you get very similar quality levels. There's other things like the swappable scales and all that stuff that you don't get. But as far as just quality of knife, the Hogue is really, really coming up with some extraordinary value propositions, right? The other thing being, you can look at the Chinese manufacturers, and I will come back to the Oui Esprit as an example. For a similar price point, or a little bit more, you get titanium frame locks, carbon fiber, and all this other stuff, and of course 20 CV as well. So there's a value proposition that, while it's not the greatest value proposition out there in knives, it's still a good one. It's a couple $100, like I said, a couple $100. By the time it's all said and done, taxes, you're probably looking at about $200 for a knife, and that does not mean going all out on the scales. You can spend $100+ just on scales for this and really pop up the knife, including machined titanium scales from them. So there's all of that as well. So there's a value there that is not included in the cost, but this is not screaming value, but there's value there. Right? This is not the greatest value proposition you'll find in knives, but it is far from a low value proposition. So you get something in there. You get a scale. You get the ability to have one, or if you want, you can go and get another one. You can have maybe two. There's other knives and stuff that have the same quality. Woo! All right, so after that, we are back in the saddle again. How are we doing? All right. Well, that's staying in there. Haha. So that chip goes in there. I'm not redoing this at this point. So tough tooties, cuties. All right. So there is a lot of that when it comes to the value proposition on this, and it's a hard one because you can go and get a honey badger and get a lot of the same things where you have a relative. It's not as quick swap, but you can get different scales. You can change it out. You can customize it. You can color them. You can get different blades for the same thing. There's a swappability of parts within the honey badger for less, but you also get less knife. You get FRN scales. You get D2 or 8CR13 steel. You get, bearings, and you get lots of good action. The materials and stuff are significantly cheaper, right? And in this one, you get G10. You go on the website, TRM manufacturing and all that. Three Rivers MFG, I believe it is called. I'll put a link down in there when I put this. But Three Rivers Manufacturing they have scales, all stuff on it. So the value is really good, especially for an EDC, a custom collection. Instead of having to spend a bunch of money clicking knives, you can literally just start collecting scales, and they're really easy to swap. So there's a value proposition in this knife that is rare or non-existent in most, if not all, other knives. So it's not cheap, but it is not expensive. There is value there, and I went way over for the cost to value ratio, but that's it. And here's the last one: the expectations from this knife. I expected it to be a good EDC knife. It is. I expected it to be a slightly better fit to my hand than the TRM Atom. It is and it isn't. TRM gives me a little bit more room to do stuff, but at the same time, it puts a lot of knife on the back of my hand, which isn't always great. And this one just fits better. There's less wasted space. It fits my hand in every grip, and there's just not a lot of extra knife to go with it. So for me, it's a more efficient design. And that's the expectation I had for it. Delivered on more. This actually delivered on more points. I expected it to be actually more of a more drop down like the Atom, and it wasn't, which was a nice bonus. It's slightly different, which gives it a different characteristic when using it as an EDC knife in the pocket. There's a little bit on the tip that for piercing tasks and stuff like that is actually a little bit better. So the expectations are good. With that being said, you guys, it's time I have nothing. This is damn nice. The design is, unique and useful enough that there's all sorts of stuff that goes with it, right? The aesthetics of it are, you know, it's a knife, but at the same time, it's unique enough that it's like, wow, that's actually really cool. There's some great lines to it. The mechanics are really, really on point. It's hard to fault. It is a phosphor bronze, so, you know, it's there. It does take a little bit of break-in, but the action is on point and tip-top for a phosphor bronze. And the noteworthy points on it from the swappable scales that are so easy to do, as well as just customize your knife and swap it out so you can have a little bit of changes without changing your knife. Absolutely great. The cost to value is not the best, but it's a really good one. There's value that this knife brings that is non-existent in other knives. And even though the price isn't the lowest, the value is still there. It is, you're not paying for stuff that you're not getting. And that's really the important part. And as far as the EDC expectations, it is on point. It is one of the better EDC knives you can buy. There might be some parts of it you don't like. You may want, hey, I want, you know, the axis lock or an axis type crossbar lock. I say axis lock, not in the actual brand, but in something that hits the axis or goes into a crossbar on the axial plane. Or across the axial plane. So there's things you may want, but you're not losing value. So this is really a good knife. And I would give not only this knife 5 stars, but TRM in general 5 stars. It is not the greatest value proposition as far as like bang for your buck, but it is a great value proposition in terms of EDC, collectability, and just usability for, I want 1 or 2 knives and I will buy some scales and I can use it with every outfit. I don't have to worry about style. I don't have to worry about matching. I don't have to worry about, you know, if I get bored with something, I can change the scales and change the the aspect of my knife. Fantastic in that bit. And that brings me to the end. Highly recommendable. If you haven't seen other reviews of this where they say so, by all means, go check them out on other channels. It is a really great knife that really does well. It upholds the family resemblance, name, and capacity extremely, extremely well. The Atom sets a really, really high bar for EDC usability, especially if you have larger hands or you need the larger blade length. And the Neutron 2 really brings that home with the smaller size and more EDC and pocket-friendly usability of that size. So it really comes up there. It's a top-notch. It's up there in the, yes, great knives. It's EDC classic, modern classic that is destined to become a long-term design, similar to something like a Chris Reeves, in my opinion. This is a design that will continue to last long. It hits all of the necessary points for a good EDC. It has the size, it has the modularity, it has a family that if you don't like the size of this one, well, you can get a very similar experience in a knife that fits you. There's more out there. So again, I'll put a link in the description so you guys can see it. But this right here, you guys, this is the TRM Neutron 2. It is highly recommendable. I am a 5-star person when it comes to this knife. Absolutely fantastic. And with that being said, you guys, this has been another dose of Drew. It is something that goes through, but remember, another dose of Drew in the Friday Night Knives and knife review and EDC gear. Once again, you guys, I am said Drew, and go ahead, watch this. Go ahead, continue to watch this video. Watch it twice. Come back, comment as much as you like. Beware side effects, and remember to like and subscribe. This has been your dose of Drew. I am said Drew, and you guys have a great rest of your night.